Let's go, rock stars. I've opened up a small beta for the Mental Fitness Blueprint, a personalized 90-day guide for working with your mind instead of fighting against it. There's only 50 spots, so if you feel called to this work, I'd love to have you part of that first 50. Details are in the show notes or at mchampagne.com. This is a bit of a different start or intro, so why don't you take it away, Patrick, and then we'll start the show right from there.
Man, I love it. So I'm going to invite you to get coherent with me, Mark. And so the first thing I ask you to do is just first quiet the mind, the value of this. And I'll ask you to quiet your body as well. All right, so I always like to start out with a couple cleansing breaths just to settle down the nervous system. Nice deep inhale through the nose. Yeah, just let that out. Do one more of those. And just let that out. Just let it go. Beautiful. All right, now I invite you to, you can do this eyes open or eyes closed. I love to take away one of the senses so you can really drop into your body. So I'll invite you to do that if you're comfortable and you're safe. And I'll ask you to focus in the area of your chest, the area around your heart. Breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. I want you to take a moment and think about someone or something in your life that brings you joy, appreciation, or love. And if it's helpful, you can always place your hand on your heart to bring that energy and attention there. Now I invite you to make a sincere attempt to reactivate that renewing feeling. As you continue focusing in the area of your heart, I'll ask you to radiate that feeling out to every part of your body at the cell level. And now radiate that from yourself, to everyone in our room, to those that love you, that you love the most. We'll do this for another 20 seconds. And then we'll bring our attention back to the environment. All right, my brother, gently open your eyes, wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers. And my friend, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for leading us through that. Oh, that feels good. After a day of travel and outside of the regular routine and so forth, that felt really energizing and refreshing. So thank you. Thank you.
My gift.
So Patrick, just to put some context around what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Who are you?
It's a deep question. Man, Mark, I often ask myself this question on a daily basis, believe it or not, because I am working really hard and moving away from doing to being. And so I absolutely love and appreciate that question. Mark, I spent most of my adult life in uniform, serving our military. I had a great opportunity to serve along some of the best and see some incredible places in the world. Some are just deployment and keeping readiness alive, but some of those places that I wouldn't want anybody in humanity have to experience. And that's really delved into who I've been. I'll just take you back for a minute. Going back, born and raised in Chicago, Small neighborhood. And what I love about Chicago is just very diverse. It is a truly, I call it the smallest big town because of that reason, that you have so much culture and food and true resiliency because it is Chicago from every aspect, from the people to the environments to the climate, right? And that is just, it's actually forged a lot of resilience within myself moving into everything that I do in life. But it's also a great environment of community and contribution and everything that we do in service, if you will. And I think that's what led me into coming into the military and then serving in the military with that aspect that I was there to serve. And it continues to be part of my heart center and my mindset in life and my interactions with every other human being in the world. Fast forward from the day of coming on board, things were popping off in Iraq, and I was looking around and I was going to college, and I realized that I got to do something bigger. Service within the neighborhood wasn't working well. I need to really get out there and do something larger. And so that called me. Wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That didn't work out. Took second string. I shouldn't say second string because all my Marine Corps buddies would give me a hard time. And came in as a Navy Hospital Corpsman, where I served my tenure of 20 years in the military, most of my time deploying with the Marine Corps to those austere conditions. And I will tell you, just keeping it short, man, just serving alongside some of the best, that the expectation is to perform in high pressure situations alongside other medics, warriors, my Marines, my sailors, other care providers, spiritual leaders. And working through that, it was that we would build and learn organically how to be resilient. But really looking back, it was toughness or grit, all those things that from our perspective, and that was the mindset, was to continue to push, press, and carry on no matter how difficult or challenging the environments were.
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, I saw within my time many of my brothers and sisters degrade, right? Just from the nervous system and the way our mind thinks. So, mind, body, and spirit certainly could be broken in those environments. And often it's not just combat. And so we often get around that. It's just about the daily grind of wearing the uniform and doing what you're expected to do and meeting those expectations without the tools and techniques and strategies that have drawn me into my new journey of helping others heal, but more importantly, being the bridge between who they are and what they do to becoming who they can be in the world at any level. And when you ask me who I am, the first thing I think about is I'm a family man. I'm a protector. I'm a servant. And I want to believe that I am a guide and a bridge to greater human conditioning so that I can give that guidance coaching along the way. So members of our society as human beings can actually be the best version of themselves.
Hmm. Thank you. That context and details is very helpful. And I have quite a few questions actually, just from that share. And the one that I think feels most prominent, at least right now, is just, I guess, when did you start seeing a shift or a change or an openness and a willingness to adopt practice like how we opened this conversation with into the Navy or frankly anywhere where you're working? Because I as soon as we started doing the work, I'm surrounded by this kind of work, so I knew where it was going. This is great, but also at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, has he done this with Marines and so forth? And I know I think you have in probably a little bit more recently, but I wonder, like, how do you have those conversations? How do we, because you and I are biased because we live and breathe this work
Right.
and we know the benefits, but to get from like here to way over here, there's sometimes a gap. And to your point, and I think you use brilliant, beautiful language and it resonates, you've got to build a bridge. So I'm curious, why don't you fill in some details on that
Yeah.
topic?
Man, I'll just give you a little backstory and how it really landed on me. Um, as I shared with you, as the transition went on and I came back and I was working as an inspector instructor with the Marine Corps, and we had a lot of our folks coming back from the different deployments. But it didn't even hit me then. I started to see our guys degrading and identifying folks that would come back, end up at DRBs, which is a disciplinary review board, and recognizing, man, this wasn't the same sailor that left and came back.
Yeah.
And not to say anybody's broken, right? But we know that if we break glass and we put it back together, it's never the same. And they should come back, and ideally they come back stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so literally it was during my first transition. So after 20 years, I was invited into a group within the Bureau of Medicine to go out and teach about stigma and operational stress control. And one of the things that we can get the conversation going, so we start looking to our brothers and sisters and recognizing when someone is struggling, but then have the courage to ask for those resources and then know how to do that. That's evolved since then. But during that time frame, I was having conversations with our warfighters, as well as spiritual leaders, caregivers, everybody I just referenced.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one gentleman, even one of our leaders in there, senior guy. And if you look across his chest, you know he had been places that others haven't gone. And what I saw in him was just a spirit that was missing. And you get that 1,000-yard stare. He just wasn't, he was just spent, if you will. And I knew this about him because we were talking about just biophysics back then, even biofeedback, and all his vital signs were just off the charts in the wrong direction. His sleep was fragmented, and he was broken down as far as his energy levels. And so I asked him the question, even back then, was, when was the last time you checked in with yourself? When was the last time you checked in with your heart? And brother, he just sat in silence. And he says, I just don't know. And so for me, at that moment, it clicked that we do a great job of teaching our guys tactically, whether it's on the firing range, doing their job at the best capabilities, teaching them to be what we thought was resilience, but we're concerned on everything in the external. We haven't taught them yet to look inside. That was the first aha moment for me 15 years ago. And so I started to really dive in to what were the aspects that really contribute to that. And then Mark, here was the real aha moment that I really went deep, is I started to see this within myself. I thought I was thriving. And I think every other human being on the earth has been trained very well for that sympathetic nervous system to get the top-down approach that we can meet all this with our minds. And what I've learned over time is really digging into the neuroscience and the psychophysiology and sleep science. I was very fortunate to work in a sleep lab for 3 years under warfighter performance and really dive into that piece. And that's a whole other piece of the journey. But that's when I really started to do the work and the research and become my own self-scientist. And working alongside researchers, research physiologists, research psychologists, and neuroscientists, just a wonderful place for someone like me who's so curious about the human behavior and human conditioning that I was able to work alongside them as a retired military staff so I can communicate that to the military. I delved into that and I recognized that I too was not where I needed to be. The real aha moment, Mark, was I'm sitting in my office and I get a call into one of the conference rooms at the Health Research Center. And he said, Patrick, man, we see you every morning. You come in every day. You've already PT'd before people are even waking up. I'm in my PT gear, turning over, and I'm back in the game, and I got a lot of energy, I think, most of the days. I think I'm doing well. And they asked me to clip in with a device. I don't know if you've ever seen these, but I'll turn you on to it. So you're here, and you immediately check your HRV, which gives you an opportunity to look inside your autonomic nervous system in real-time biofeedback. As soon as I clicked in, man, it started being in red.
Oh no.
So I immediately gave it back to him. I said, all right, well, you got to give me you need to
That's
find me a
broken.
replacement. This is broken. So at that point, the member from Heart Math Institute asked me to put it back on. They explained to me that although we are so good from this top-down approach, and I'm still a master of that, and I'm still working on this piece, that there's so much more going on below the neckline within your physiology and your nervous system. And so what they were identifying as a dysregulated nervous system, although I was managing it well, and that's because I've been trained for so many years,
Yeah.
and continue to thrive on. And so that was my aha moment. And since then, Brother, it's been 15 years working on the Bureau of Medicine, training this stuff and evolving that, bringing my body mental fitness into it, really getting to the left of things, if you will, and then bringing in biofeedback and piloting that with our warfighters at all different levels. Yeah, as you can expect, my community has their arms crossed, right, when we walk in the door, because we're going to talk about emotions. Yeah, that's right. We're going to talk about emotions.
Yeah.
And all that being said, when we can show them that one of the greatest drivers of our physiology is our emotions. And so
Yeah.
it does take the science and the data that you can't argue with that really opens up their arms and say, okay, let's delve into this a little further.
It's beautiful. It is. It's interesting. You know this because we were messaging back and forth. But I was with a group yesterday. Basically an association, a union that represents all of the teachers for the most part across the country over here in Canada, and
Amazing, bro.
I still find it thank you. At least as of today, I still have to go up there and crack some light jokes around, "I'm not standing here in a robe. Don't worry, I'm not gonna suggest a 14-day silent retreat." And again, not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but it's just it seems at least still a little bit required to just put people at ease a little bit, but then all of a sudden we do 2 or 3 minutes of guided breathing and the whole room is you know this, you feel it right away, and then at the end, people are coming up, and, "Oh, that felt so good. I know I can implement it here." And it's interesting because it's just I imagine you had to go and you probably still go through that in some way as I was thinking about this as you're mentioning, okay, we're going to talk about emotions and so forth. And even just getting, and this is the question I have for you, even just getting into guiding people into checking in.
Mm.
Like that gentleman that you were referencing, how did you go about helping him check in? Like, what does checking in with your heart even mean? I feel like so much of us out here, military aside, we're almost at war with our insides
Yeah. 100.
daily. So let's talk about the check-in. Yeah, what have you seen work really well? And we'll keep going. There's so many things we can talk about.
Yeah, I think this is a beautiful segue into how do we truly, like any practitioner out there, any leader, how do we connect with someone, right? They don't want to know how much I know. They really want to feel me, right? So I shift and reset before I interact with anybody because I know it's energetics and we co-regulate, which is quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so to answer your question, what that taught me was that everything we do needs to be experiential. No longer can I come up here and beat you up with PowerPoints or
Yeah.
tell you about my history to get credibility. Let's feel it. And once they feel it, as you just referenced, and once they feel it, they're bought in.
Mm,
And so everything that I do with someone like this, and it's a great conversation that we often have, especially with leaders, right? Because they have competing priorities and competing authorities. And if they're not having these conversations to understand the wisdom of their heart or the intelligence of their nervous system, and that we can actually empower with them with this. And once they do that and start shifting, it took me about 2 weeks to get out of the red, by the way, literally. And
sure.
I'm talking 4 hours a day of clipping in everywhere I was at, doing the work. But you see the shifts immediately when you can get out of your head just for a minute, stop living in the past and worrying about the future, and bring in a little bit of presence in what you do in life. And my relationships changed. And so the back to the original question, I really nail these guys to say, what's missing in your life? Or we dig into their why. What's most important to you? So any kind of coaching or any kind of classes that I bring forward, we get into the values a little bit. I want to know what your purpose is and what your why is. And often we're going to they're going to speak to family or those things that matter most, or it's going to be on the other side of the spectrum. Man, I just want to perform well. Okay. Well, then let's have that conversation and we can bridge that gap for you with that education and we can apply it. And that's the beauty of the work that we're all doing because it doesn't just need to be for the high performer. It's going to be for the adolescent. It's going to be for these young students that are trying to get into college and do great things. And it's going to be for our entrepreneurs. That's just a stress in itself. There's a
Yeah.
different makeup to be an entrepreneur and keep that steady seas as you're going through. And then the other piece is we can hit them where the heart hurts. And so if you don't do this, what does that mean in your life? How does that impact you? And so when I sit in a room with executives, that's the number one question.
That's a good one. Someone tipped me off to that line of questioning recently, and it's still sitting with me. And now you're bringing it up again, but just almost like the reverse question of what are you willing to lose by not doing this? That reframing just brings a whole other level to the check-in, and it's a bit of a kick in the stomach in a way. And you got to take a breath. Okay, we're serious here. I'm curious how, because I think this is probably all links, but how did you get out of the red when when it came to the HRV?
Yeah.
What was it on the
It's,
somatic level or the heart or whatever else
yeah.
that helped?
Mark, for me, it really was the shift to get out of my head and into my body. And I think what I've learned over time is that the bridge between the mind and the body is the breath.
Yeah.
So very easily and within any kind of context, and I don't want to just point to the device or the technology, but I think we're all learning that we can leverage technology. At the end of the day, most technology is wonderful for awareness. I wear the Aura, I wear my Garmin, I was wearing Whoop for a bit, and it's all great, but it's all about those patterns. It's not about
Yeah.
today, the snapshot in time. So for me, it really was not only doing the practice, but seeing the data and the change real time, that I was shifting my nervous system. And then to see that I could hold it for a minute, I could sustain this state of coherence, which is the mind, the heart, and my nervous system and my emotions all in one, in alignment. In addition to that, to carry that over to 2 minutes, to 3 minutes, to 5 minutes. When I was able to maintain coherence in the green for 5 minutes, because I'm a competitive kind of guy, more for myself than I am for others. But at that point, I started to see the shifts in my relationships, including in my own house. My wife and my
Wow.
daughter, they absolutely saw it. And they'll call me, just this year, Mark, they called me out on it. They said, I want you to know that since COVID, because there was a lot of work that happened during COVID, self work that is, that you are a whole different man. And I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was shocked, man, because I always thought that I was always leading with the heart from a place of love and care and compassion.
Yeah. So how do we do it is the question. You mentioned breathing. Of course, we went through, I imagine, a version of some of the practices that you've explored at the top of this show. But just for everyone listening, what are some ways that they can at least get started and get curious and start to feel some of the benefits? And then ideally, then that fires up, as mentioned, some curiosity, and you go a little bit deeper and realize that there's actually quite a bit of resourcing and tools out there to help, but we've got to get started.
Yeah, Mark, it actually comes down to exactly what you do very well. Asking the questions, but get curious. Get curious about who you want to be and then learn, right? So when you get curious, just I like to know how my system works. And I think most people do. Data's great, all right, because it drives things. But if you could just get them curious, and from my perspective, my framework is always going to be psychoeducation up front. I just want you to know, I want you to know what I know. I want to empower you with understanding what's going on between the mind and the body so you can bridge that gap. So you understand why you're doing what you're doing and why it's working. Once we can bridge that gap with a little bit of education up front, and it doesn't have to be heavy, it doesn't, because a lot of that could be very heady, especially with my community. I just want them to understand the autonomic nervous system, just understand that there's a fight and flight system as well as a rest
Mhm.
and digest, or rest and renew, I like to say, and that it's important, and that life's it's beyond balance. We have to go to a place of rhythm. What are we doing throughout our day to keep that
Yeah.
rhythm going and stay at that point? And so the way I started, Mark, it's different, right? If we just want to give education to folks, I would say, man, pick any breath you want that works for you. There's 100 ways to do it, and there's 100 practitioners out there. There's what I do with anybody is I like to start them out with just to identify where is their breath at.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Man, if you want to experience it, I'll take you through it, brother.
Yeah, sure. Why
All
not?
right. Here's what I'm going to invite you to
It's a
sit up
yes
tall.
day.
All right, man. I'm gonna invite you to just sit up tall,
Okay.
with dignity. Doesn't have to be rigid. I'd rather it's not. Just relax. I want you to take your right hand. I want you to place that on your chest, wherever you like. I like to take your left hand and put that on your belly. I want you to close your eyes And I just want you to breathe in a little slower and deeper than usual. And really just pay attention to where that breath is at. Is it your chest rising and falling? Or is it your belly? And when you're ready, share that.
I definitely feel it in my belly, but it's a little bit more in my chest right now, more than normal. And I don't
Okay.
know, maybe I'll stop there. I'm already trying to get to solution mode.
Here's the question. As a practitioner, and I would assume most of your community, they know the value of breath, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's nasal, mouth breathing, otherwise. But those who are staying in their chest, first and foremost, are probably mouth breathers, right? Because
Yeah.
our nasal breathers, that process is all the way down into the belly. Now, the other thing is we are so good at training our body to be sympathetic state, which is a very upper level state, that it stops here. If you think about anybody, the last time you were angry or excited or fearful, where is the breath at? It's right here, right? And
Yeah.
it's straight to the mouth, right? That's what we
Yeah.
do. It's normal, right? It's a normal response for survivability. When we can teach that if you drop into your nose, take that breath a little deeper, that breath a little deeper, actually use that diaphragm, give yourself 30% more space of oxygen and drop in there. Now you're going to find your body already relaxing, because what that does with that turnover of, of oxygen and CO2 starts to communicate to the brain that things are okay. And now you're operating from a more objective and composed place. The next thing I like to do is I like to dive into heart rate and heart rate variability.
Okay.
A lot of my folks don't know the difference. Is it something you want to talk about or dig into?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I love it, man. I love geeking out with you like this stuff, man.
Yeah. 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 Why
um,
don't you just give a very brief background on? I feel like there's so much talk about heart rate variability. I'm sure most people listening are aware, but just in case, just a quick
and Mark,
rundown on what this
and
is.
if you want an experiential at the end of this, I can give you an experiential, and it's quick, down and dirty, that I do with my guys and gals. And so, first and foremost, understanding that heart rate is exactly that. It is a measure of time of how many beats per minute, period.
Yeah.
You're not looking at you. In the past, they believe that is like a metronome. Boom. There's no response to that. Now, what that would look like on paper would look like a flat line, which we know is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, heart rate variability is exactly that. It's variability. It's the one thing when you hear variability, it's a positive thing. And
Yeah.
that is
It's
the
so
big,
true.
yeah.
Takes
So
a
it's
little while for the mind to get used to that. You're like, "Whoa, wait a second, I don't want it to be high. I don't want anything to be high."
and all that. You know what I love about that is that's just a measurement of the flexibility and adaptability of your nervous system. That's all that is.
Okay.
And so, for our folks to understand the difference of heart rate, just a measure in 60 seconds of how many beats you had during that time. Heart rate variability is giving you the variation between those beats. The greater variable, the greater flexibility and adaptability in our nervous system, which allows you to ramp up to meet the demand and recover just as easily, so you can extend your energy throughout your day.
Hmm. Okay. So when you clipped in and you were in the red, then you had a low heart rate variability. Just
It was actually the clip in all the way. It identifies your heart rate variability. It was actually measuring coherence. So now this is another ingredient.
oh, okay, yeah,
So if you want to layer it out, if you want to layer it on, so heart rate variability, we're measuring heart rate variability, but not just the spaces. At this time, we're measuring the smoothness of the waves of your heart rate.
mm,
And so with someone who has low coherence, and that means that everything's aligned, mind and body, with the heart, with our nervous system and our emotions. Somebody who is dysregulated would look like, and I'll show you another time, brother, the technology, you'll be able to see that would look like jagged edges, like chaos.
okay,
Or think of like waves out in the ocean, right? There's a lot of this noise going on. That's
yeah,
incoherence. And so that, you and I both know, right? That's the beta state.
Yeah. We're in the
right?
chop. I think a lot of us are in the chop often.
And so with the switching into coherence, now understanding through breath work, coherent breaths, you're going to be able to shift into a more coherent state, meaning alignment and flow, if you will. And that is the difference of, and that's going to put you in the green. So that's the
Okay.
measurement of the green. And so when you
So is a
stimulate,
coherent breath, sorry to interrupt you, but just because as you're saying some of these things, just to define them. So is a coherent breath what you brought me through? Is it's
I did.
slow, deep breaths and like from the belly up to the chest and so forth? That would be a coherent breath?
Yeah, and anybody can do it. So this is the
Yeah.
cool thing is anytime here's the fact of the matter is I don't think anybody is, when was the last time, even ourselves, right, who are practitioners, how often do we intentionally exhale? Even
Yeah.
our folks out there, when they get upset or they're feeling anxious, they take a deep breath in. That's a sympathetic response.
That's so true.
And you can, and what I do with my folks, we don't have to do it here unless you're interested, but what I do is I'll have them actually find their pulse. And then I'll have them, just like we did, we'll get rid of those senses, remove the eye senses, inhale and exhale at a slower pace. And you
Mm,
will recognize that as you inhale, that's the expectation because it's sympathetic, you will have a rise in the heart rate. And as you
yeah.
exhale, you have a decrease. Those that practice understand that. But once they see that, now we built the bridge of understanding that the longer your exhale, the greater your rest and digest system. Very
S-
powerful, right?
So then I guess what starts to happen is it, it must just come back to awareness, right? And then you start catching yourself throughout the day and bit by bit, you're paying attention to the breath. Maybe you're doing a few different sessions, but really, you're, as much as possible, you're breathing in a coherent way most of the day while you're right. And you just start to pick it up. And then it just becomes the norm versus now where we don't think about it at all, unless we're in some sort of state where we need focus on our breath. I'm generalizing, of course, but
And
yeah,
90% of the time, it's people just inhaling, not even focusing on
yeah,
it. That's so powerful.
yeah. Wow. What else? So what else have you found? Let's go back to your work with the Marines and so forth. Like, what else did you find really resonated with them? Because I love when we're working with extremes, right? Those are individuals that are in situations that typically are quite extreme, and then we can learn from those things, right? Because if you can do it in situations like that, then I mean, we can do it anywhere. This is my philosophy.
Yeah, so that's a great example of that would be anytime we have our folks on the firing range, right? We know that there's a breathing cadence to that in order to get the round down range. And any of them, when we engage them, we ask them to, we use, I'm sure you may have heard of this box breathing.
Yep.
So, whether it's 4-4-4, 5-5-5, all the way around the box, which does a few things for us. It grounds us, it gives us some space, and it down regulates us. And so, with any of our folks, and then we also have a Marine Corps martial arts program. So, anytime we're working with those folks, we can exhaust them physiologically and then have them engage in a breath to recenter.
Hmm.
They go into the sandbox and actually do the work. So that way
Yeah.
they can re-engage their prefrontal cortex. And a lot of the time, the way I like to explain that is, and this is getting a little heady, but I really want to keep folks out of the midbrain, if you will, the amygdala, right? And you've heard of the amygdala hijack,
Yeah.
right? And so what we often do is let's expose them to stress. And here's the framework that I use is up front. I'm just a big believer in preparation, shift and resetting in the moment so you can perform, and recovery. And understanding what each one of those means, I'll define them for them, and then I'll take them through processes for each one of those sections, and then expose them to each one of those areas. Preparation could be long-term preparation. It could be 5 minutes before the fight preparation, and then while you're in the fight, you have already done the mental reps and the physiological reps. That now, as you stated so eloquently, is that becomes our norm, right? So now we recognize it from a physiological place that we don't have to think about it. And that's second nature because we've done the reps and our body knows it as well as our brain does.
Yeah.
Now we're able to get into that fight and we're doing all these micro recoveries along the way so I
Yeah.
could stay in operations for a longer period of time. And that applies to all of us, man, from the student athletes I'm working with to the executives I work with,
Oh, yeah.
and our warfighters, for sure.
But it seems like it's totally, and I'm happy you expanded that context as well, because you're right. Like it's the way that I look at it is you have your proactive work and like your
Mm,
regular consistent work, which I guess I would call a lot of the heart coherence and that kind of work. Then there's these situations like what you're describing when you're at the firing range or whatever it is, or in the executive world, maybe you're going in and you're pitching the board for budget or whatever. Like there's a million different stressful situations, let's
for
say.
sure.
And then you have those tools to regulate and take control of yourself in those situations. And I guess in a perfect world, that's the toolkit, right? Like you just you keep them all in check. And like you said, you put in the mental fitness and the reps and keep going. But I would love to know a little bit more about, because I know you do a lot with the Heart Math Institute,
Mhm.
which obviously we've touched on some of that. But what are some things that have surprised you over the years that you had no idea that you use
So many
now?
good. Yeah, no, beautiful question, man. I have an aha moment every day. I really do, bro. I'm learning to be more conscious. I've been hearing that word for so long, whether it's in business or just being a human being,
Yeah.
husband, conscious father. The greatest aha moments are the reports back of how a relationship shifted because so many of the folks that I work with, because they are working at such a high level, sometimes we forget, man, if we don't take the time to do our own inventory. And I got rituals, right? My morning ritual, I have a daily ritual, and I have an evening ritual. And I'm just ritualistic. It makes life easy, if
Yeah,
you will.
for sure. For
I try to
sure.
check those boxes. For that self care is not selfish,
Yeah.
but in the man, I'll just give you a personal one. Literally, we were going through some stuff, man. Just a lot of work going on, and with the government, the contracts and whatnot. And so I was vibrating at a different level. And my wife, in bed, literally, she reached over. And usually, I'm the one that put my hand on her because I just want to radiate so she
Mm.
sleeps well. And she put her hand on me and she says, "What is wrong?"
Wow.
And I was taken aback, and I was like, "What do you mean, babe?" Because I was top down, I was good, right?
Yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
fine. I'm still PT, and I'm still doing what I need to do. And she says, "No, you're vibrating at a different frequency." First of all, for her to use that terminology in my house, I was super excited.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. Big win, big.
but for her to feel that from me was
Yeah,
huge, man. And so that just made me realize that I need to continue to do my work. And it's when you're being pressed the most, especially from those external environment things, that you got to do more work in order to keep that rhythm going that we're talking about here.
yeah.
Beyond the other
So
ones,
what
man,
did
is
you do? What worked for you in that just carrying with that personal example?
I literally got out of bed and just said, "Hey, I'm gonna take a walk."
Mm.
There's one thing to stay in your house, but human conditioning is so interesting to me and exciting for me. That's really where I feel my work is at any level. Is I knew I need to shift the conditions of what were going on in my body at that time. It wasn't something I could talk myself through.
Yeah.
And so movement's number one. We know the power of that. And so I literally stepped out. It was probably man, probably 12:30 in the evening.
Mm.
And I just stepped out in the moonlight, and it just happened to be the brightest moon that I've seen like forever. I don't know if I was just like heightened because of that,
Yeah,
or
yeah, sure.
but and there's no accidents, right?
Yeah.
And I took a stroll and just quieted my mind. I dropped into my heart. I asked myself some of the questions that I ask myself daily, and those are you living in alignment with who you want to be, not what you do, but
Yeah,
who I want to be. And because I was doing a lot, and they were all good things, and so
sure.
it drove some of my conversations and discussions and decisions that week that I removed some stuff out of my life and I just made space for those things that really matter most. And that was back to self, back to
Yeah.
family, all those core values that we hold so close.
So powerful. And so far we haven't talked about really anything that's not accessible to everyone listening. Like you stepped out, went for a walk, and got quiet. right? And aligned and asked a few questions and so forth and checked in with yourself. And I really do believe that, especially in today's world where there's just so much happening at such a fast pace, that the superpower, the competitive advantage, if just for ourselves, but then in any line of work that you're doing, revolves around this idea that if you can tap into presence
Mm,
and layer it to the next level of a different level of consciousness and be guided and so forth, you're miles ahead of everyone else. Because unfortunately, and I wish this wasn't the case, but we know the data out there. Most people are in a survival state of
mm.
mind most days. And of course, I think we're all doing as much as possible to flip that. And I think the more that we can have conversations like these and share and work with others, then to your point, what your wife did and reached over and be like, hey, vibrating at a different frequency here. I think others will start to do that. And then we can have a nice collective, hopefully calming down, coming back into coherence and so forth. Because we started out coherent. It's just we mess it up as we go. It's yeah, it's wild. It's a scary time, but it's also, I feel, very hopeful, and it's exciting as well because there's just so much conversation around this kind of work, which is inspiring.
Mark, what's so inspiring is that it's simple, but it's not
Yeah,
easy.
correct.
I think there really is a simplicity of just learning these things, and that's going to be like work like you're doing right here, educating the world. But most people are seekers, right? They're looking for that. So how do we get it out into the world? My vision, other than philanthropy, so I can serve the ones that are underserved, is a shift in humanity. And I know we can
Yeah.
come at it with the same tools and techniques that we talk about in strategies, different language, different approach, meeting them where they're at, and then just really recreating a culture and a shift in generations, right? That's what has to happen. It's through these conversations right here that is so powerful.
Patrick, as we wind down here, any final words you'd like to leave us with? The time has gone by pretty quick, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. But let me pass the mic over to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mark. I want people to realize, man, if it's the work that I'm doing, is that the greater investment in yourself and your own self care. Really, we are our greatest asset. And if you don't invest in yourself, it's going to impact how you live out the rest of the years of your life. You and I have these conversations about longevity and about health span over lifespan.
Yeah.
Every decision matters. It's a currency
Mm,
into who you want to be in the world and how you want to show up in the world and what you want to contribute to the world. And it's very easy to pull from that currency and use it. Contributing to it has to be intentional and deliberate in everything that we do. I would, just because of my work, I would advise you to drop in your heart more often, do the work of going from a place of busy doing and really focus on being or becoming who you want to be in this world.
incredible. Thank you. Thank you for your time today and coming on the show, but a higher thank you for dedicating all these years into this work and now expanding it out to many different groups, which is beautiful to see. Keep going, and I look forward to seeing what comes next and seeing where our journeys go as well. There's so many things we can probably do together. There are many listening, I'm sure, as well. I think we just need to stick together on this path, and then
Concur.
it becomes exponential. So thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.